Welcome to the Chefofx podcast.
Well, my former case manager, Anthony, turned supervisor. He got terminated. This is a while ago. It was while I was still in session for summer quarter.
Yeah.
Like about, I'd say, mid-July. He's doing better now. In fact, he started today or yesterday.
Wait, why did he get terminated?
So he was having some issues with one of his supervisees. That person, well, I'll just name it. Gabriel was going to be difficult. He was like, essentially, there was an instance of insubordination. Like he wouldn't listen to Anthony, and then like Anthony was like, okay, you can have supervision under Nancy, or we can make this way to work. But he didn't express, and he wanted to terminate him just himself, but he never got around to doing it. And when the other two supervisors, Brian and Anna Lilia, when they let him know that they were terminating him, they weren't clear about the reasons. Anthony thinks it's what's that? He wanted things to be done that they didn't want to do. So he's a challenging authority. That's what his take was on it.
Wait a minute. So let's for clarity go over this one more time. So there's this, you had a supervisor, and something happened to that supervisor. This is like, you guys work together?
Yeah, and he used to be my clinician when I was in services. And then...
Okay, yeah. And then he got terminated because he had a problem with someone else?
Yeah, with one of his supervisees. Yeah.
Someone else he was supervising?
Yeah.
Were they on the same level as you? This was your peer?
I wouldn't call it peer because he does a bachelor's in anthropology from UCLA. But he was new. He was actually... I started working there as an actual employee before he did. And then this person got a lot of clout with Anna Lilia and was able to swing things that someone, compared to someone who's been there 4 years, it was a bit unusual how it happened, but that's how it went down.
What did the person from UCLA do? You said that person has problems with people, right?
Yeah.
What was the problem?
So, for example, he had to go to court for a client or with a client. I don't think the client was there, but essentially he was supposed to tell Judge Manley that, hey, he's not doing well in treatment. He's not going to groups. He's using. But Gabriel said he was uncomfortable saying that. And then as a result, he just ended up telling the judge, oh, he's trying. He's doing his best, but he didn't.
Oh, so he didn't properly. So he's supposed to be managing someone in the mental health court.
Yeah.
And he didn't properly report to the judge the true condition of his client.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of that, the supervisor got removed? Because of the misbehavior of the person working underneath him?
Yeah. And
what happened to the person who actually was making the mistakes, and why was the supervisor removed?
Well, Anthony mentioned that since one of the directors, or the director, she left a year ago, and then they got a new supervisor, and then he was okay with that supervisor, but once that supervisor left, which was 6 months ago, or 7 months ago, he began to feel uncomfortable and he wanted to leave. But someone was like, oh, just give the new management, a couple months, and then if you don't like it, you can leave. And he's beginning, I guess this is not really answering the question because he's not sure himself. They weren't clear. But he's also beginning to dread work, felt depressed, and like wasn't.
And this is the person who's dreading work was your supervisor. This is not the guy from UCLA.
No.
What did the guy who's, your supervisor, what did he do wrong?
They did mention he was giving time, essentially giving employees work that they didn't, not like saying if I left at 4, but he would stay till 5:30, when there's nothing to do, he just oh, you can leave early. That was one.
That's one of the things that Anthony did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
said that's a violation of our policy or something.
Yeah. Also you might say like, okay, there's like a smaller target that's important, but the bigger picture is more important. And then the supervisors, other people will be saying, oh, let's focus on the small thing, when they don't realize that, you know, there are bigger consequences and other places to look at.
So he had a different vision too than the superiors. That would be a problem.
Yeah.
Or it could be a problem. Well, it is what it is. So yeah, your supervisor, he got thrown out and now he's back.
He's at El Camino Hospital in Mountain View as a LCSW, working in their inpatient unit. And he says it's basically like EPS, which he's
What's LCSW?
Licensed clinical social worker.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to have a master's degree in order to get that, and so on. I looked at a little bit of the specifications just for my own like idea to see whether like this is something I want to do. But yeah, so he's there. He says it's basically EPS, and he's really excited. It's a better job, better pay. The only thing he's complaining about, which not really, is just the commute. But yeah, I met with him last week on Wednesday. We had lunch, and he told me about this, and we're still staying in contact, which is good because he really supported me when I first got out, and fortunate to have developed a strong relationship with him.
Yeah, lucky you, because what's her name ditched me as soon as I finished the program. She was like, hey, I'm out. Never contact me again. But it was, I didn't really need the support at that point. Yeah, I guess that would be news if somebody that I had worked with, like while I was in hard times, out of jail, dealing with my mental health shit, if they got fired, that'd be a big deal. But then again, Stephanie got fired. And that wasn't too big of a deal. She's still around at Deanza. I had her on my Tinder actually for a while. But we took a picture when I went through the Black Grad. I invited 2 non-Black people, Stephanie and what's his name? I didn't invite him, but he showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think his name is Daniel, the funny dude, the white dude. So I was like, that's the most ridiculous fucking picture I have, is me graduating from a community college, which is weird in and of itself. Getting an AA is just weird because I don't know if it's meaningful in this country. But then also to have these people who, like, in some weird, odd, sideways way, were at one point considered like my mentors. When in reality, I feel like, I could mentor you guys on a lot of shit, to be real. I mean, one of them got fired. The other one, I don't even know what his deal is, but anyhow. That's good, man. What else? What else is going on? Besides your supervisor being thrown out of the program that you now made it through and work for. So you got all your shit expunged already, right?
Yeah, and also like I told you about the restraining order expiring.
Yeah.
Done on the 6th.
Wait, which day? How many days away?
It expired on the 6th.
Oh, what is today? The 8th?
Today's
9th?
10th? Oh no.
Whatever, don't say it. It's fine. Anyhow, that's good. And you're gonna meet up with your family. So how long had this restraining order? What was it against your mom, your dad? My dad. So your dad put out a restraining order for you. What was the original
I think it was
cause?
the courts.
Okay, maybe the courts. What was that story, and how is it as of up to date? At the beginning, you were cool with your dad, and then what were the events that transpired, and then how does that make this a celebratory moment for you that this is going away?
Yeah, it was. The people say in mania it's hard to remember what happened, but I remember relatively clearly. So it was just the day before was the 11th, July 11th, 2016, I think. I didn't go to work. So my parents did this thing where like if I didn't work or if I didn't work like immediately, like in the morning, whatever, my dad would drive me to like the library or the community center. So then I was in the library on the computer and I just didn't go to work at Maracay. And then they called home. Like, and then my dad was like messaging me on Google Hangouts saying like go to work and whatever.
How old were you at this time?
19.
And had you finished high school?
Yeah. It was during my gap year.
gap year. So you finished high school, you took a gap year, you worked,
Yeah.
and then out of the blue, you just didn't go to work one day.
Yeah.
And then they called your house, and your dad says through
Go.
Messenger. Yeah. Okay.
And then I went home. I walked home, and it was like late at night. And then the next day, I had an opening shift at Jamba Juice. I had to get there like at 6.
How many jobs did you have?
I actually had 2, Jamba Juice and Maracay. And then I was a recreation leader from June to August of 2015.
Mm.
Then I had a Safeway job that I got shortly before graduating, but I got fired from the Safeway job because they said the schedule that we had agreed upon, I was not honoring that. I didn't want that schedule to go into. It's too restrictive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so that day, which is July 12th, I refused to go to work. I eventually ended up being half an hour late. And then after that, well, I'm running around the day because and then it was the 13th. I didn't want to go. I didn't have work that day, but I didn't want to go out of the home. And then all that's happened, and then my parents called my psychiatrist, which I hadn't been seeing for about 5 months, and he was like, "Oh, you don't need to see me anymore for now, and you don't need to take medication." So I've been off meds for a while. And then I was yelling and screaming, and then I pushed my dad down the stairs. Also poked him with a steak knife before. I called the police. I got arrested, went to jail. Spent 15 weeks, got out, got service as a gardener. And at first, Anthony tells me this too. He asked me if I remember, I didn't want to admit that I had a mental health problem, and I wanted to say everything that happened was my dad's fault. And then right around when I started the DV classes, which was February 23rd, 2017, something just changed, something clicked. I was able to realize that something happened, and it was of my doing a lot.
Yeah.
So this whole process happened, and soon I started going to school, and I started recovering, and I still had contact with my family, with my mom and my brother. For a while, I couldn't see my dad because of what had happened, but I regained their trust. I started working on myself too. Met some people along the way. You included, JP.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, and then I started doing things. I was doing things I didn't think I'd be able to do before.
Yeah.
Which is succeeding in school. I think being happy, which I wasn't always growing up. And then was an intern for a gardener for a couple of months. Worked in Maracay. Went to Dianza. And then I remember getting recognized at some of the quarterly parties at Gardner, and part of the reason why I got hired as a peer mentor was because they saw that I was growing, while I was in services. And then I graduated from court. What's it?
2017?
No, it was 2018.
2018?
Yeah, it was March 29th, 2018, I think. And then it took until around January 20th, 22nd, 2019 to graduate from Gardner, and then some months passed.
But do you have to graduate from Gardner if you already finished the court stuff?
I think a lot of times when you graduate from court, soon you're just close your case.
Yeah. But the case is the reason why you had to go to Gardner in the first place.
Yeah. I think part of it was that I was going to get hired for some opportunities.
Yeah,
so I just want to keep in contact. And then the restraining order expired. And the thing with going back home is that my mom's not in the best health condition. So with the flights, the stories of her home, she can barely go up the stairs. So most of the time she's essentially trapped in a room. So they might be moving, and they don't know what we're going to do with the house. We're going to sell it, give it to me, who knows. and there's a lot of stuff like that's getting moved around. Just like we've accumulated so many things over the years. So when the four of us met, my mom, my dad, my brother, and I, we met a few times together when my brother was back from law school. But then towards the end of one of our dinners, I was like, hey, what about like going home? And then we talked about the pros and cons. And then my brother, without taking a position, said that we could have like a 2-week trial period, like when the fall quarter starts, and like see like how this goes. And like maybe like I go back and like this brings back bad memories. I can't do this. Or my room sucks. But I don't think we'll be even doing that. I talked to my mom, and just like so much is going on with her. And Anthony talked about like surrounding people who I want to be with and who have like similar goals, ambitions. And at Heaven's Gate, to be honest, most people don't think or don't have higher education as their next step, or even one in the future, more distant. There are a couple exceptions. There's one guy who's going to school at San Jose City, but for the most part, they might be employed, or some of them don't even just collect SSI, and they're okay with that.
Can you describe Heaven's Gate? Because now that I'm completely out of the, San Jose kind of mental health court housing circuit, it's very odd for me to describe it to people. But the two things that stand out are who your housemates are, and the nature of how life works in those community living spaces. So, you mentioned you had a house meeting, for instance. What are your responsibilities as a member of these, of Heaven's Gate? And also, what's like the typical Heaven's Gate resident like?
So to live there, you have to attend the 3 house meetings. Tuesdays, they check your meeting slip. Thursdays, readings from the Big Book or the 12 traditions.
And that's AA stuff, right?
Or NA.
Some people don't.
Yeah.
Or NA.
Right.
Yeah. Big Book, 12 traditions.
Yeah. And then Sunday is the weekly check-in. And along with those 3 in-house meetings, everyone's required to go to 3 outside meetings, at least.
And are the house meetings AA, NA meetings? Or are they discussing things going on in the house, like toilet paper?
Oh, they're just like general stuff. They're not. They're separate.
Based?
They're separate from the outside stuff. Yeah. And then there's a maximum of 16 people living there, not including the assistant house manager and the house manager. There's 2 4-person rooms and 4 2-person rooms. And then Lee gets he's in the reduced capacity since his surgery. But
how do you apply to those houses?
I'm in one of the 4-room ones, or the 4-person ones.
No, but I mean, how do people who want to get in?
Well, for me, I think you can get referred by the courts, but for me, it was just I wanted to do it because I got my 1 year at Evans Lane was up, and I had looked at some other housing places, but like some of them were like too strict. Like Amicus House was like you have to go to 6 meetings a week. And you can't really do that. And this one was still close to Gardner, and there was Wi-Fi, and I knew some of the people at the time, so it didn't seem that bad.
What's the rent?
It's 700. Well, I pay 680.
Yeah, but that's up there.
Yeah, and there's additional. Well, it's additional 40 for food.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 660 plus 40 to make 700, and the food's not good. I mean, it's okay, but it's dinners, only 1 meal, Monday through Saturday. Sundays usually sandwiches, and then when we do spring cleaning on the first Saturday of the month, they get pizza.
Spring cleaning for so in winter, spring cleaning. In summer,
yeah. And then the thing about the meals is that you'll be lucky like 3 out of the 6 days to have like a couple servings of vegetables with what is being provided, and never any fruit. So that's why places like Sacred Heart are important, because they, give out produce in bulk and grains and so on.
Now, you didn't have a history of addiction, but do you feel like you benefit from all these meetings, all these AA and NA meetings?
To be honest, when I first started at Heaven's Gate, I didn't even make it to those Tuesday meetings because I had to work at Maracay for a while, and they never checked my meeting slip. And at that time, I was doing consistently about 2 meetings at Gardner, or 2 groups. Sometimes I get 3 and somehow. But now, for the longest time, I haven't been going to any meetings, and they don't say anything about it. Yeah. And it's sometimes like the people I've grown a little close to at the house, they like to joke like, Elliot, when are you going to do your meetings or whatever? They even like some, and then they go just, I'm playing with you, Elliot. But like no one is seriously like, because in the beginning I remember like Lee asked like, oh, what's your drug of choice? And Anthony was like, no, he doesn't have a drug or alcohol problem. And then later it was like, Elliot, what are you gonna do about your meetings? And I told him about like Electronics Anonymous, and those groups like in Cupertino are far away.
Did you ever go to one?
No.
Oh, never. You gotta go. I mean, you've been saying that for years. Hey, maybe this is the right meeting for me. I am interested in seeing what happens if you go to an Electronics Anonymous meeting, because first of all, you'd probably be the hardest person in those meetings. There'll probably be a bunch of people who love Pac-Man and this and that, but it's like, you've kind of paid a heavy price for your, what some might argue is an electronic thing. I don't see it really as that. It seems just to be a normal manic thing to me. But, however, everybody can define their own thing differently. You should actually go to one, because like this is probably one of the only places where they have those types of meetings.
Yeah.
Maybe they have several options. But it's in Cupertino. But, I mean, Deanne's is in Cupertino.
Pretty sure I could find a way to make it work. I have to look at the stuff again, refine them.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is time for the most important question in the universe. 'Cause
5 minutes.
Oh, dude, we could just stay until they card us. Yeah, I'm wondering how come nobody's packing up their shit. This is only for the people who aren't students. They don't know we're not students. Are they going to walk up to us and like, oh, you look like you're not a student? Where's your fucking card? Like, we look like students. We are students.
I think somebody was looking for recommendations on Facebook, and they mentioned I think we were in the Santa Clara Library, like a similar rule to what's going on right here, but you can still stay apparently even if you're not a Santa Clara student, but you're just like a student in a local area.
Yeah.
So.
Because that's dumb that you have to, like, the question becomes like, how do you know that someone's not a student? Oh, we card you. But who out of all these fucking people in here, who do you choose? You just profile them? You don't look like a student. Prove it. That other person who's reading this book, well, they're obviously students. Let me actually refer back. I knew that housing was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, but actually let me explain a little on my end. So I recently moved into an odd housing situation. It's a living room. And I actually I was thrown out of my other house, which was the dopest fucking house. It was a dome. I don't know if I explained this to you, but they have these domes at Davis.
Yeah.
And it's like the hippie houses, but they got taken over by the social justice warriors. And long story short, they said, this dude is the most problematic dude here. Get him out. Like after one quarter, they threw me out. Well, they tried to throw me out, but they were a little sloppy with it, so they couldn't do it. Anyhow, then I ended up moving into a sublease in a normal apartment, and that was okay for the summer. And I just moved in September into my, my house outside of the domes, which is this living room with this like ex-physicist guy, and this girl was like in and out of school. It's like an interesting mix, but they're not all like hardcore students, but they're also some of the more, they're like, I think of them in the same way that like I just think of them as intellectual oddballs, which makes them more interesting rather than less interesting. But anyhow, I barely know my own roommates, but whatever. Since I moved in, I've realized the amount that this domes living has affected my perception of housing, but also the way that living in San Jose has affected my perception of housing. Because I was thinking, man, when's the last time that like over the summer I had this, but when's the last time that I had a room with my own bed, right, not a bunk bed, that I could close the door and open the door whenever I want? And it's like probably 2015 has been the last time that's been the case. And that was the case when I was in the sublease. And I thought, I actually prefer this weird ass shit. It's actually transformed me, because when I was in the domes, one of the things I did was build it. I turned it into a podcast studio where I just had microphones, cameras set up 24/7, and I would invite people over on the weekends, and we just chop it up. And it's like everything was set up for that. You know what I mean? But because I was like sleeping on the floor and it was a small space and I was sharing it with this other person, it's 2 people to a tiny house. And because of the drama that went down, I feel like I'm the version of me that the things that I liked about extreme environments like Evans Lane and jail I'm seeing them in a completely positive light, and I still like them. Like, I would think, man, it sucks that I'm in this room, that I can't fucking leave, But it's also nice that, I don't have to worry about, it's almost like I can think freely in this room. There's a certain freedom that has come along with being deprived of something. And that's how I feel about living spaces now. No, they just card everyone. State. What is that? Is that just
California?
Yeah. Well, whatever. I do have my Davy ID. But let's see if I had anything that we didn't. What are you looking forward to right now? Besides the stuff that you already went over. So the restraining order is over. You might inherit a house, is what I'm getting out of that story. And your boss got fired, but now he's working somewhere else and he's happy.
Yeah.
So besides that, I mean, what in your life, is kind of brand new? Because when I think of the restraining order, I say that's something that you've been waiting for years, Yeah. But what about within the last maybe 1 year, just 6 months or week?
Pretty much done with writing my first draft for the UC prompts.
Right. You're applying.
Yeah. So there's that.
Where do you want to go?
I think I'm going to do a tag with Davis, and then I'm also playing at San Diego, LA, and Berkeley, and then San Jose State. And
no Princeton? Where'd your brother go, by the way?
He went to Harvard, and now he's at Yale Law School. What was I going to say? I'm going to have my parents look at it, my brother look at it. Then if I'm going to try to get permission from a couple of my instructors and my former supervisor at the writing and reading center, see if they want to look at it. And I've been listening to the new Taylor Swift album. Oh
right, I forgot about this whole thing.
That came out August 23rd.
And just to be clear, you've been into Taylor Swift since when? Since the beginning, right?
Well, I think when I looked at like my medical reports, like it first said like 6th grade.
That was on the medical reports?
Something from maybe my first Manic episode.
Yeah.
But I do recall, like, I haven't I wasn't a fan since when she started, which is back in 2006. But I do remember like vaguely, like, well, I do actually not vaguely. I do remember singing along to, I think it was like Love Story in the car, coming back from a soccer game. My dad was driving me, and then there was this girl that our crush on me in 6th grade, and then I think her friend was like, "Oh, Jessica likes Taylor Swift," and she was like, "No, I don't. No, I don't." But anyway, yeah. Then my first manic episode was, the imaginary marriage of Taylor Swift, and for a while, like, music wasn't that important to me. It wasn't until like after high school that I started like getting CDs.
Yeah.
And actually like, then I used Spotify for a while, and then I made a Pandora account in March of 2015, and then I started heavily using it after I left Evans Lane. And then I got into like, I guess, more artists.
Wait a minute. So you like listening to Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
But when you're thinking of it, you're not thinking of, having sex with her, marrying her. You just like the music now? But at the other point in time, you wanted to fuck? Like, what was the... Because I'm wondering, is there anything that's different between the manic desire for Taylor Swift and the normal one? Because it continues.
Yeah.
But you're not doing anything wild, right?
No.
It sounds like you just like the music.
Yeah, and I think as much as possible, I guess I like the person as well.
Okay, well, that's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Because you've never met Taylor Swift. But but then again, she's a celebrity, so there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
So you could piece together what she might be like.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Whenever I have an experience that's similar to a paranoid episode or a manic episode, I immediately try to distance myself from it. Anything creepy about somebody's plotting against me, I immediately try to recognize, no, that's just manic shit. Fuck that shit, But for you seem to still side with Taylor Swift, even after all these years, the episodes, it's like you think she genuinely is cool. You don't see this as like, maybe this is just a manic thing coming up. You're identifying with it like, no, this is genuinely me. I like Taylor Swift.
Yeah. I remember one time I usually call my mom once a week. I don't remember when it was, but one of the conversations a while back, she like asked me like, "Oh, Elliot, do you still want to be with Taylor Swift?" I think I also remember talking about like in jail, like, like I'm wanting to meet her, but this is like even since back all the way back. And then my mom was kind of like, "Oh, you can like meet her like in a meet and greet or whatever." But the way I think of it, I feel like there's some kind of like something that's not logical about it. But I think like, oh, when I think of meet and greets, it's like tens of millions of other people have done this with her. Like, what makes this another meet and greet special? But it's
it wouldn't be special.
Yeah. So that's what I think. So then I'm like, and then I think like start thinking about impossibilities, like, like normal people don't become friends with, or non-celebrities don't become friends with celebrities. It's just like,
yeah, it's unlikely. But also there's the thing of like, whatever you like about Taylor Swift, there's people within your circuit that probably have those character traits, but if you never test it out, you might be associating something with Taylor Swift that's really just something that you like in general. Taylor Swift's not the only fish out there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe not even the best for you. I mean, does Taylor Swift like people who had restraining orders in the past? Now, there are people out there who do. But probably not good old Swift. All right. Well, we got to get out of here. So I guess we can do the most important question in the universe. I'm going to let you finish chewing that, though. Put the mic close so we could hear that scrumptious. I was doing like a video test this summer, and there were these two white chicks giggling off in the corner. I was in like a public area, and I said, just like the problem I have today, I have trouble framing myself, right? Because I can't be sitting here and doing it. So unless it's close enough, it's weird.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? Maybe they can help me out. So I went over and said, excuse me, I'm doing this thing, whatever. And I already had the microphone set up, but I just didn't have the camera. And there was one camera back then. And they were giggling and bullshitting about, our duck spurs and some ridiculous stuff I don't know what they were doing. But like at some point, one of them said, we saw the microphones and we were wondering, do you do ASMR? And I said, no, I don't do that kid shit. I said, no. And they were like, oh, you should. And then it stuck with me. And I've been going through life, doing whatever I'm doing, washing dishes, doing laundry. But it reminded me of hearing you chew that shit, reminded me of that moment because I'm like, well, honestly, when I think of the shit that I do with music, like you heard some of Grimy on Timey, when I think of that shit, a lot of it is just a spin-off of the podcast. You know what I mean? I wanted to learn how to do certain things so that I could do this. But if you can do this, you can also record music, it turns out, or record hip-hop stuff. It's not that hard. Making beats is the only thing that's completely separate. But like capturing vocals, it's the same as doing podcasts. ASMR fits in that category. You know what I mean? I already own all the equipment I need. I just don't have any interest in it. But obviously other people do. Anyhow, it is time for the most important question in the universe. Pebble or boulder?
Pebble.
That's right.